University in 2017. And after I graduated, what I was finding is that a lot of my friends and classmates were going down kind of very well-trodden paths, and during the banking route, the consulting route, large companies. And there's no knocking that, but I always wanted to do something a little bit different. And I thought for myself that it would be the right time to take a risk and do something abroad, or do something a little bit riskier, because it was my first job, my first experience, and there's a little bit less, inertia to try something new at that point. So I started looking into opportunities abroad. I knew someone from Georgetown that had done SageCore previously, so I applied. And then, so a few months after I graduated Georgetown University, I moved abroad to Dublin to work for Dogpatch Labs. I was working as an intern. I was on a 3-month contract as an intern. After 2 months, I was given a full-time offer, and I've been working there in September, it'll be 3 years. Beginning of September, it'll be 3 years. And, Jake and I've been the SageCore city manager for 3 cohorts now, and 2 of them have been with Jake. This program has been super beneficial for me, because, taking that step and moving abroad is difficult to do alone, and it's difficult to do without a support network. And SageCore was really instrumental for me to make that final leap. And I'm really interested in kind of giving back and evangelizing that opportunity to you all that may be considering it, because it was to date, it was the best career move I've ever made. So yeah, I'll let Jake give his intro then as well.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the words. Yeah, Jake, you want to share your story?
Nice one. Yeah, and I'm loving that I'm seeing a couple of familiar faces on here. I've got Elizabeth and some others from previous cohorts. I'll have to flick through some pages and see if I don't recognize anyone else. But hello to everyone who knows us. Hello again to everyone who doesn't. So yeah, my name's Jake. I'm from Austin, Texas. Same as Chris. I've been here almost 3 years as of November of this year. So I got here a couple months after Chris. My route is a little different as to how I got over here. So I graduated from Southwestern University in Texas, which is a small private school just outside of Austin, in 2014. And immediately after started working with startups. Again, same as Chris, had a lot of traditional career paths that I had looked at: law school, going in an MBA, working in kind of a traditional large corporate. And it ended up there's a vastly kind of awesome startup scene in Austin. So jumped right into that. Worked for a couple different companies, small, big, in terms of startup size, one of which got acquired by Grubhub, which is really cool, and seeing that kind of transition happen. But then it got into these kind of incubator co-working kind of startup hubs, and helped launch one there in Austin with some folks, and did that for about 2.5, 3 years. And then that's how Dogpatch actually found me. So I might flick through a quick deck later about kind of just Dogpatch and what we're doing, but there's this wider global network we're a part of with Google, called Google for Startups, and I was managing the partner hub in Austin, and now Dogpatch is the partner hub in Ireland. And so vis-a-vis a connection who's Dutch, so another international person. So I definitely harp on networks and the people, not only in this cohort here, but everyone you meet, whether it's someone in your company or outside, like you should always view that as an opportunity for you to like share your story and get your kind of dreams, aspirations, whatever it is. Like if you don't put it out there, it's never going to happen. So the more you can talk about and verbalize, like this is where I want to go, these are the types of roles I'm looking for, and just tell people about it, opportunities are going to come to you. I mean, this was a guy I worked with years ago. He reached out to me saying, hey, this would be a great opportunity for you. I know you said you looked at maybe going international. We're hiring for someone. I know you're the best person for this job. I want to introduce you to the founder. And so vis-a-vis that connection, Dogpatch recruited me over, took care of my visa. And so I've been here, like I said, 2.5 years now, and looking after the whole community of about 100 startups. So really cool experience. Again, yeah, coming abroad, having a cool network of people like Chris and the SageCore fellows that come in every summer and in the fall now, to kind of connect in with. So again, little different path of getting here, but for myself, it's been incredible to get, like I said, connected with everyone here, to have the, like I said, the network and the experience that we get being international is like bar none. So kudos to all of you for taking the jump in and getting involved. So
awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Jake. You mentioned the deck. Let's just jump right into that so everyone has a little more context of what is Dogpatch. You've mentioned it a couple of times now. I have obviously harped on it, and both of you work there. But our students are probably sitting here thinking, okay, Cool. Dogpatch Labs, like, are they, are these all animal related startups? What's going on? Not the case. And so I'll let Jake share. You want to share your screen and share the deck? Does that work? Or
Yeah, it says it's screen sharing is disabled for attendees.
yeah, let me make you have enough privileges to do that, and we will.
Other than a great name, Dogpatch
Yeah.
is dog friendly. It's actually named after a neighborhood in San Francisco where it was originally founded. So do have dogs and excited. The name itself, Dogpatch Labs, comes from a neighborhood in San Francisco. So look, I'm going to flick through these really quickly. Again, Jacob, I can send this to you afterwards if any of the fellows are interested. So don't feel like anyone needs to take notes. This is just to give you a background, a flavor of what we're doing. So Dogpatch, really what it is we're here accelerating the development of the Irish tech ecosystem. So we have a hub that we run out of Dublin, which about half the country in Ireland, just for context, about half the country lives in one city. So about 1.5 million people or 2 million people in Greater Dublin live here. We're working on the entire country. So we're working with regional hubs, we're helping policy initiatives, and the whole goal is to make Ireland as a nation the most attractive place to start a company, to work for a company here, to invest in, to take education and raise a family. So we're just trying to make Ireland kind of like the most attractive place for businesses. We work in the middle of what's called the Silicon Docklands or the digital Docklands here in Dublin. So there's companies, we have Facebook, Google, Amazon, Zalando, Airbnb, like all the big names are right down the road from us. So we have this clustering effect where we have big companies coming in, people leaving places like Google to start a startup. Our startups sit right in the middle of all these folks. So really cool in terms of where we're located. We're just over 5 years old. So again, we were founded in 2015 by an Irishman, Patrick, who's our founder. And we've kind of grown organically through that. So we've kind of grown with the community, expanded into 3 different floors. We have about 56,000 square feet between all different spaces. That's not including our retail store we're launching later, which Chris will talk about in a second. We've had some cool visitors. Some of you may recognize some faces on there. Probably not the Dutch King and Queen, but certainly Harry and Meghan. So we've had some fun people that have come through, some really cool kudos coming from them. We work with big companies as well. So I'll kind of flick through, and we have this global network I talked about with Google. So we're part of this larger kind of 50 hub partner network around the world. That's how I got connected in. It means we can send our startups all over the world if they're doing business in China, in South Africa, in Brazil, anywhere in the US, all over Western Europe. We have local kind of on the ground connections we can plug them in with. About 100 companies, 500 members. Again, give you just a sense of the size and scale of what's going on here. But Dublin is a very international city. So it's kind of a tech hub here in Europe. It's now the only English-speaking country in the EU post-Brexit. So very attractive for US companies that are coming over. A lot of UK businesses are actually hedging some of their people into Ireland as well. So mainly startups, but we work with social enterprises, kind of not-for-profits and tech for good type companies, some corporate partners, investors, kind of digital nomads, solopreneurs. So it's really a mixed bag of different people. It's kind of a train station for startups. We work with all the different industries. So like Jacob mentioned, yes, we do have ag tech. So we do actually work with some animal companies, but we also work with Internet of Things and smart cities technologies, fintech. I said tech for good. Investors, chatbot. The Wobot there is a chatbot for mental health. We're working with advertising companies. It's all over the board, but they're all these digitally kind of transformative companies that are coming in, typically pre-Series A. So anyone who's familiar with startup funding means they've maybe gotten a bit of seed funding in the door, but they're still small. They've gotten a little bit of money to kind of proof of concept and prove that their business model can scale. And so we get these companies that are super exciting and hot and maybe coming over from the US or somewhere else in Europe. And we really just get to like hang on to the rocket ship for about 18 to 24 months and help them grow. And then they leave us. Always running cool events. And then when they leave, they become alumni. So Intercom is probably the biggest one here. I'm not sure if anyone here is familiar with them. Any website, most websites you go to have a little chat window at the bottom that pops up and says, how can I help you? Most companies run that with Intercom. So they're an Irish tech unicorn. They were the first unicorn, I think. Them and Stripe are the Irish unicorns that we have. There's actually a new unicorn that just got named as of yesterday, but it didn't come through Dogpatch. So these are companies that have graduated. We're also the most active event space in the country. So about 10,000 attendees. We're running everything from developer meetups, fireside chats, corporate offsites. I mean, we're right in the middle of the city. Again, I'll give you a flavor for that. That's our events room downstairs. So just a lot of stuff going on between our startup activities, internal programming, as well as external kind of meetups. I run this big program called First Fridays that we run in partnership with Google every month. It's like a big ecosystem early stage development event where we do mentoring, thought leadership talks in the afternoon. And we're bringing together kind of the best speakers from around the ecosystem to share their knowledge, tips and tricks, war stories with some of the early stage companies, because a lot of it is emulation. I mean, everything is kind of copy and steal whatever you can and kind of format it to what your company's doing. There's very few things that have never been done before. Someone's done it, let's learn from the people that have done it. And so we try to surface some of that best practice. Crunchbase recognized this last year. Any of you who aren't familiar with Crunchbase, I would definitely subscribe to their newsletter. In terms of just startup activities, you can localize it based on what city you're in, markets you might be looking at. There's job opportunities they share out in that as well. We were on their list last year of top 15 incubators around the world to know. So that was really cool. We run kind of two different programs to corporates in terms of how we help them innovate. One of them is kind of working with startups where they partner with early stage companies. The other one is an internal innovation program, which is working like a startup. I won't go too deep into those. Again, want to get to your questions and whatever else, but this is kind of helping a company like a big bank or the national energy companies, ESB. How do they think like a startup? How do they become agile? How do we look at new technologies and evaluate whether we should be investing in those? Should we acquire a startup? Should we build that internally? How do we rapidly use R&D testing cycles like a startup to help us be more competitive? I mean, banks are absolutely shitting it right now with the likes of Revolut, N26, and Monzo, and all the competitor banks. Like, they're trying to figure out, how do we stay competitive with all this existing infrastructure around us while these banks have just sprung up online and can just offer cards. And so it's a big conversation, and these disruptors coming in, the corporates are thinking about as well. So we're helping facilitate some of those conversations. We do run kind of traditional accelerators as well. So that would be like a Techstars, Y Combinator, 500 startups, things that maybe you guys have heard of. And that's, again, like a 3-month program, accelerate them, make introductions, and they have a demo day at the end where they try to get some investment. Again, a little bit, we'll speed through the rest of these. We run a national network as well as our global network inside of Ireland. So this is helping us inspire and empower some of these regional communities and ecosystems. So the likes of Cork and Kerry and Galway, Belfast, that may not have as much concentration as Dublin. How do we upskill their staff? How do we provide funding and access to knowledge holders and mentoring to some of these more rural communities and help them, like I said, really upskill themselves and create these incredible kind of, hopefully, rocket ship companies? Almost done, I promise. We have a policy influence organization that we've spun out as well. So how do we create a favorable policy environment for share options, for equity schemes, for how do you invest? You know, the investment climate in the UK is very different than Ireland. How do we encourage more angel investment? How do we get companies that exit to reinvest those earnings back into earlier stage startups, which ultimately helps the ecosystem grow and mature? So we've spun that out. We have a great group that's running that. And for lack of a better term, it's a lobbying group. They're lobbying the Irish government on behalf of startups and entrepreneurs to get policies that are more favorable, not just to the Googles of the world, but also to the one-man startup. So that's really exciting. I might hand over to Chris here because this is more his forte around smart cities and retail innovation. So Chris, you might just tell me slide and I will move it for you.
Yes, got you. So like Jake mentioned, we're in the center of the Dublin Silicon Docklands, which is great for many reasons. Like you mentioned, network effects. It's also great from a smart cities perspective. So this this area here outlined by the white line is an international test bed for IoT technologies. International VCs have flagged this zone as a test bed for these technologies, including SoftBank, one of the largest VCs in the world. And we're testing all sorts of these technologies. We're incubating that tech at Dogpatch Labs, and then kind of piloting throughout this district. So what our ambition here is to be kind of that central node within this smart district. Slide, Jake. So as part of being kind of that central node, we're working on creating a smart building. So we have a partnership with the CHQ building in which we are located, meaning that we don't have to have permits to test technology, and we can be really agile and learn fast. And the other thing that we're doing in the building, in the project that I'm primarily working on, is this retail innovation store. We've taken a lease on a retail unit in the building right across from our space, and we're creating, and it's actually already physically complete, just waiting on COVID restrictions to be lifted to be able to open it. But it's a space to sell the most cutting edge, sell and showcase the most cutting edge startup products from around the world, be it a smart home device, a health tracker, IoT coffee machine, drone. And these are typically products that you'll only be able to find online. So you can't test, play with, try before you buy, which is kind of a critical part of that consumer journey with these hands-on products. So really getting those products from early stage into consumers' hands. And then on the kind of consumer tech tracking side, this is a sandbox for IoT technologies like smart sensors, beacons, different retail technologies that retailers will be looking at to optimize their in-store experience, to understand their customer in a deeper way. So retailers will be looking at this space as kind of a showcase for those technologies that they'll be bringing into their stores. So we're really excited about that. Again, that's opening later this year. And it's really, if you want to think about it kind of in a simple way, it's a retail store of the future for startups, and really trying to get them, lower the barrier to entry into physical retail for startups. So yeah, is there another slide there, Jake? Oh, there's a video if you want to fly through. I should actually share some updated photos of the space because it's physically complete. But as you'll see, the products are laid out kind of on Apple Store style tables, aside an iPad, encouraging touch and play. The really cool thing about this space is that it will also convert into a workshop and event space. So it's a very dynamic space in that sense. The products clear off the tables, whiteboards pull across those shelving units, chairs pull out of those tables, and you have a workshop space. And this is kind of driven by the understanding that the future of retail is very much dynamic, and it's also something that needs to be workshopped and iterated upon and adjusted quickly. So, you know, when a startup deploys their product into a large retailer, they don't have the opportunity to take in that customer feedback, iterate quickly, and then change their offering for the next day. That's what they'll be able to do in this space. Do you want to go to the next slide there, Jake? Yeah, here's a kind of a list of some of the products that we're looking at. Want to go to the next slide? Yeah, and that's just a general overview of that. If you have any questions specifically on that, you can ask me in the breakout group as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we'll be partitioning the group into two, so you guys will have the opportunity to ask Jake and Chris any more detailed questions about Dogpatch as it relates from the community side or retail innovation and smart cities. Both of them are subject matter experts on each, and hopefully can provide some insight. So if you have any questions, jot them down. We'll go into breakout panels probably at the top of the hour, and you'll have more time than you had last time, given your feedback to chat with people. So we will go through that. But I think now I'd like to have each of them share a little bit unique perspective, starting with Chris. You know, all these students are at different ages, at different points in their college career. Some of them are recent graduates, some of them will be graduating next semester. And so I'd love for you to talk about, you know, securing that full-time offer after SageCore, like what you did to position yourself at Dogpatch for them to, you know, want to extend you an offer to stick around, especially as a you know, a foreign student in Dublin. So we can start there, I guess, and just speak about securing that first job after college and how you were able to do that through your SageCore experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So before graduating, and like probably some of you, I've had internships, summer internships. I worked at a consulting firm. I worked for the Washington Wizards. I had these internships, and I had always expected that my first full-time job out of college would be, you know, a full-time employment rather than another internship. So that was kind of my mindset going in, and then it kind of I accustomed myself to accepting this internship at Dogpatch Labs because I really wanted to try something new, and you know, it's kind of taking a bet on myself to be able to earn that full-time position. So as soon as I arrived at Dogpatch Labs to start my internship, I stated from the get-go, this is something that I want to do potentially full-time if it's a good fit. I'm not here for the 3-month contract. I'm here as long as it's fulfilling for me, and as long as I'm kind of advancing my career. So it kind of sets the tone from the get-go that, you know, we're going to treat you as a potential full-time hire rather than someone that'll be here for 2-3 months and see what we can get out of you for that period. So I think, I mean, you all are entering I mean, different phases, but a potentially interesting phase where you're looking for a new job in this landscape, which is quite difficult. And, you might be similar to me, where you might be accepting an internship after college, where you might have previously expected a full-time offer. And again, the thing that I recommend there is to just state your intentions and your standing and your kind of career goals from the get-go, so your manager, your boss can understand where you're coming from. And then from there on, once I set the stage, it's really about kind of going above and beyond to prove that you are super proactive and you're highly valuable for the company, and you want to make yourself indispensable, really. So you don't want to just be doing what the workload is for an intern, because that's not the role in the end that you do want. But when I was working as an intern, I was working on an accelerator program. I actively sought out more responsibility, more work. I would work harder than my internship salary would have dictated, just kind of as an investment in myself, and just proving that I was really serious about this. So it's really just about hitting that bar, getting everything done that they're expecting, and then going even further than that, and just getting on your manager. What can I do more? How else can I help? Would this be helpful? Or just do it and say, I actually thought this would be helpful. Here it is. One example of that is when I was an intern, there was a kind of a weekly membership report that we were doing as just kind of an email to stakeholders. And one week I thought, I think I can make this a lot better than the current process. And I created a full deck around it, kind of building out more graphs and statistics around that process, and presented that to my boss, saying, I think this is a better way of presenting our weekly reports, and I think we should do this from now on. And that was, I think, was a key thing in him understanding, like, this guy is actually proactively thinking about how he can provide value to the company, and he could be someone that I need. So that, like, just small, I mean, it wasn't really difficult. It's just kind of a change in mindset. And so I was on a 3-month internship, and after, I think it was a month and a half, once I got a full-time offer. And I think that's the position where you want to put yourselves in, is your manager or your boss is not even looking at you as an intern because you're not acting like one. So that, I mean, it may help some of you, but if you're in that situation, that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. No, Chris, that's great. I think regardless of whether you're in that position right now, speaking to the students of this is your internship after college, I think Chris hit on a really important point, that given the global landscape with the pandemic, the uncertainty with hiring and uncertainty with new roles is probably going to exist. And that's not to freak you all out, but it may mean that whether it's the SageCore experience or an experience after, that first role very well may be an internship opposed to a full-time offer out the gate. And I think keeping in mind a lot of the things Chris was saying about what he did to position himself to receive an offer is critically important. And again, whether that's at the startup you're at now, and you realize that you're currently interning for a company that could be super high growth or is super high growth, and you're identifying that, and you want to be a part of that ride. Don't be afraid to have that conversation with your manager, with the bosses at the company, and let them know that, hey, I came to this program just as a SageCore intern. I've been here a month now, and I want to be here for the long haul. I want to be here beyond that, because that's what Chris did, but it's also what Jake said at the beginning, that if you don't let your intention be known, regardless of what it is or your career path, the people you connect with won't know how to help you. So make sure you're voicing that and understand that. Chris, that was super helpful and great. I want to shift to Jake, and we'll jump back and forth as well. But Jake, I want you to share your perspective of, you talked a bit about you got recruited to come abroad, but I know that in an increasing globalized world, it's becoming more and more a career goal for students coming out of college to have a work experience abroad, and not just have their entire career exist in the US or in the home country. So I'd love for you to shape, kind of or speak towards your mindset in realizing, okay, abroad is something that I might want to do in my career, and then how you enabled that and what that transition has been like being an expat in Dublin.
Absolutely. Look, and I'll be the first person to say, like, there was no grand plan that was behind the scenes that I was like, I'm going to do this for 2 years and then transition to this and that. It's all really been opportunity recognition. which there isn't a secret sauce for. It's really just to say, like, again, as cliched as it is, like, trust your gut, like, put things out there. And like, when you feel like something feels really strong and you want to go for it, like, you just have to take a chance. The worst thing that can happen is they say no, you don't get the job. Like, that person doesn't make an introduction for you. Like, it really, like, you have to ask yourself what the worst thing could happen. And it's never as bad as what it actually is. So, but yeah, so for me, like, again, like, I really had a great opportunity out of college to work for some early stage startups. Felt like I cut my teeth and kind of learned the ropes at that stage. And again, like, had the opportunity put in front of me. I was actually trying to sell software to the company that I ended up working for in the US called Galvanize, which was the startup hub. So I was actually selling to them, and then they told me about what they did. And I was like, that actually sounds awesome. Are you guys hiring? They're like, well, actually, we're opening a hub in Austin. Like, here, you should get in touch. Here's the hiring manager. So like, it was all these weird kind of, I'm at a meetup, I'm talking to people. This is what I'm kind of interested in. So again, I think attending events and putting yourself out there is super important. And that's how I just meet a lot of people, and I try to make myself remembered. I try to take notes about something if I can remember afterwards. I'm really good about using like like a nomiker, or like a naming device, like how to remember someone's name, how to remember what's going on, something interesting about them that I learned while we chatted for 10 minutes at whatever, some networking thing. And the power of following up, like, just to send a quick email either the next day and say, hey, it was great meeting you. You know, I hope we can connect in the future. Like, you guys have no idea how powerful, especially at your age, reaching out to like a CEO or a C-level someone or a hiring manager or anyone. Like, at your age, everyone, even at my, like, I'm 28, like, I'm only a couple years, you guys as senior, like, people even now my age would be like, I want to help that next guy get there. I want to help that 21-year-old who's just out of college, who's like super hungry, but you have to be specific. So I guess kind of the two sides of that is like, put it out there as much as you can, talk to as many people as you can, say, I'm interested, but it has to be specific. Like, I'm interested in ecosystem development. I'm interested in finance with, you know, companies that do this, or I want to try to do this. All they're going to do is go, that's really interesting. Actually, I know a guy that might be tangential to what you're thinking, but maybe he knows someone, and just ask. So I think, one, putting it out there with really specific, like, this is what I'm looking for, but I'm open to other opportunities. And then really going out there. So if you see a company, whether you're working for them or not, or, oh, you know, it could be Tesla, it could be any of these companies, you know, if you find a startup person, email the CEO, hey, I saw you guys did this. I read your article that you posted on LinkedIn about this. I thought it was really interesting. Would you have 10 minutes to have a coffee? And especially now, again, everything's digital now. Everyone is doing Zoom meetings. Everyone is online. Hey, would you have 15 minutes for me to just ask you? Like, the best advice that we give founders is not to ask for money, but ask for advice. And the same is true, I think, when you're looking for a job. If you're asking for a job, people, like, again, for me, I have so many people who come to us, I want to work for Dogpatch. How do I work for you? Like, how do I get a job with you? And I was like, whoa, we're not hiring. I don't really know. And then I feel like the bad guy because I have to let them down, or I want to give help, but it's just not, I want to work for you. How do I work for you? No one knows how to answer that question unless they legitimately have a job role open. But if you ask them, hey, can I ask you about how you got to your career, how you got to this point in your career? Hey, can I get a coffee with you and just talk about what your company does? Or like, how, you know, where did you do after college? How did you get your first job? Or how did you make this transition? The biggest piece of advice that I've gotten from some of my mentors is to ask for other mentors. Hey, I'd really love if can I circle back with you in a month? You know, hey, I thought this was a really great conversation. Can I follow up with you in a month and just share some of the work that I've been doing? I'm telling you, these guys that are at the C-level, like, they get off on that. Like, they're like, this is amazing. They will go tell all their buddies or people at their company, I met this awesome student. Like, he reached out to me about this, or she was asking me these questions, and I want to do whatever I can. Does anyone know someone that's hiring? Does anyone know, how do we get this person involved? I love their energy. Like, I'm telling you, business is going to be these people. At the end of the day, you can have the best resume, you can have all the best extracurriculars, but it's about how do you make that genuine human connection with another person. And like, do they like you? Do they like what you're putting out there? Do they like the energy that you're bringing to the table? So again, it might sound cliche, it might whatever, but it's like, anytime you're out in a room, you're out meeting new people, like, that's an opportunity to potentially like get the guy who connects you to the person who then leads to that thing. So like I said, for me, my journey was, I met a lot of people. I told them what I want to do. Like, I want to get into politics. And so I want to do this ecosystem development that's going to help me build my career skill set so that I can go then be a subject matter expert at a legislative level. Like, now that sounds very like, how do you get there? It's like, well, I've started with these community building things, and now I want to help ecosystems. So how do I get in with that? well, we know a guy over here who's going to help you. And so it's not a science, but I think there are certain steps and just good best practices that you can be doing to like always follow up with people after a meeting. Like always like say thank you. If you can do a handwritten card, I'm telling you that's like miles ahead. But just talk to people, let your intentions be known, follow up with people. And again, and I told this to the cohort that was here last summer, the summer before, cold email them, send them a LinkedIn message, send them an email. Like just, there's easy ways to scrape and find people's emails these days, especially at the startup level. First name dot last name at. Like you can force an email and find it and just ask, hey, I'd love to grab a coffee. Would that be okay? And follow up with people. Again, like those are just two things. Everything your mom told you when you were growing up that you were like, that's really silly. Like, why would I do that? Apply to business. Like everything your mom was like, this is how you're a good person and this is how you're going to be respectful. And I'm telling you, all of that, if you do that in the business world, you will blow people's minds and they will hire you. So like, I know that's not, like I said, Jacob, it's not really like a logical like path to get there, but I think it's just things that you can do and in your everyday life, every time you're going around that will happen. And you don't get unless you ask. That's again, just like a tenet of the world. Like ask for what you want. All they can do is say no.
It's brilliant advice, and it's super true, and it's been true in my life. And I think the important thing there is, right, it's not a direct path. It's not a, Steve Jobs quote, and I'm sure you guys have heard it. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. But you can try to identify what that dot forward you want to be and work backwards in some way. And so it is worth for yourselves, right, taking some time to consider what is it that you want. A lot of you may want a career in consulting, a career in finance at the core level, at the high level, that's what you're interested in right now. But take some time to think to yourself, down the road, ultimately, what does that lead you to? And you see, Jake has given thought to his career and has ideas for getting into politics and policy development for startups and ecosystems. And so having that just concept and specificity to where he might want to head has led him to identify, like he said, opportunities. The more specific goals you have in mind, the better you're going to be at identifying opportunities that align with those goals. If your goals are too broad, a lot of opportunities will look appealing and you won't be able to make a decision. You'll run into paralysis by analysis and not be able to go on that path. And the other thing is, making a decision is better than not making one. So, you never know what lies beyond the door, and you have to be willing to take the risk. And so I think a lot of the points that Jake and Chris have mentioned have rung true. And it's important that you think about those things because you all are still young, not that I'm much older than, I'm 20, turning 27 next month. Jake's 28, Chris is the same age. We're not that much older than you. And so you have this really unique opportunity while you're in college, while you're coming out, to think about these things of, okay, where do I want to head? Why? And could these people be someone that helps me get there as well? And that's part of what we're connecting here. So I really appreciate that incentive. I do want to hammer on one point though, Jake, of what it's been like to transition living abroad. In case that is a goal for one of our students, and they do find themselves in this position where they are now in Dublin, they're in Amsterdam, they're in Barcelona, and they're in a foreign land, don't know a lot of people. Chris, you as well, both of you, I wanted to chime in on this because you've both gone through this. How do you go about adjusting yourself to a new place in a way that allows you to then, pursue these opportunities and grow your network, overcoming the fear and anxiety that is living abroad and things like that? So Jake, you can jump unless you need a sip of water.
Yeah, no, I'll jump in first. I am sweating. I did ride the bike just before I came over here, so I might still be glistening a little bit. So no, I mean, look, I said it a little bit earlier there, but like you're not going to know. There's going to be things that are unknown. I think I did a lot of research. And I was lucky enough to have a place like Dogpatch, where it's this community of other expats who come from other places. I'd say that there's places like that in every other city that SageCore operates and has fellows in that you can tap into. So I guess for me, the biggest transition was like, I've never been to Europe. I never traveled out. I live in Texas. I've been to Mexico. Like I'd never been outside the country really. So it was really a like take a leap of faith type of move for me. So I did as much as most of these things are online. Luckily, again, SageCore helps with so much with figuring out a lot of those initial like visa requirements and what does this mean and how much is this going to cost and how do you find an apartment and put a deposit down when you don't have residency permits and like there's these weird gaps. So I guess for me, like the biggest thing was I looked at online forums and communities before I moved. So like there's an Ireland subreddit, not only from a cultural perspective, but from a business environment, like what am I getting into? What am I expecting? There's a Facebook community for everything. There's Reddit. There's, read hashtags on Twitter. And so like, for me, it was just like, what am I expecting? So I did a lot of research on that side. I wanted to know more than my hiring manager when it came to the legals, when it came to when do I need a visa and how much does it cost and what's there. All that's publicly available information. It's all there. You just have to go on your government, whatever country you're looking at's website and look for it. But I think, look, as an opportunity and how do you evaluate that and what were the things that I was worried about? I think money is the kind of the big one. Like, how am I going to afford to do this? Like, I didn't have family that was supporting me. Hopefully that you do have someone that can kind of help give you that. I had some money saved up. I think, again, looking at housing deposits, moving costs, plane tickets, you need double what you think you're going to need. Because again, everything that you turn on has a deposit that you have to submit for it as well. And I think, again, it's like looking for, there's an expat community, certainly a US expat community, again, in all of these cities. And luckily you all have the SageCore network to tap into. There's fellows before you, again, on and on and on, that you guys can reach out to. And so I would say, try to find someone in your network that, you know, right now has someone that knows someone there, that's been there, you know, that can tell you something. So it's like, tap into that, ask Jacob, ask myself or Chris, if, you know, if it is something for Ireland, like use the people and the resources that you have. But for me, it was like, again, I moved in the middle of winter. It was dark. I didn't know anyone moving over here, save like my founder that interviewed me. I actually stayed with him for the first 2 weeks. So I really made it a point to like, I want to go and do local activities and meet local people. Just do things like, you know, take care of the apartment, secure what's there, and you know, be safe and everything like that, but go out and meet people. And ask for things, and say, you know, I'm new. Where should I be going? What should I look at? I think having that kind of support group behind you is important, because it is going to be hard. You're going to be there for 2 or 3 months and questioning, why did I do this? Why am I here? I promise that goes away. It just becomes you getting normalized into the community and what's going on and how to get around. But for me, like I said, it was a big change. Dublin, again, English speaking, so a little different than maybe some of these other countries. But I do think just having a group of people that you can lean back on and talk about how much it sucks some days, because not every day is amazing. But I said, plan twice as what you think it is. If you are moving, so outside of the SageCore program and you're like, I want to make this transition full time, like try and save double what you think you're going to need. Do have some flexibility around traveling and getting moved over. It's going to take a little bit more time, and just be patient. Don't get frustrated by things. Ask for help when you need it. There's always going to be people. Again, I'll be the first person to say, like, send me an email. Like, I'll walk you through it. I'll tell you what I did. And just really like ask and talk to your managers and talk to the people that you work with. And again, it's just verbalizing, like, I need help with this. Don't try and do it yourself, because you will end up going crazy. And like, there's people who've done it. So don't reinvent the wheel. Like, ask for help, ask for people that have done it before.
Totally.
Does that answer what you're kind of looking for there, Jacob? I think.
Yeah, no, totally does. I think you're right. The idea is whether it's through SageCore or not, how do I transition myself and become comfortable so that I can get out and start meeting people and doing these things? And what are the things that I need to do to become comfortable? I think you harped on something that's totally true. When I went abroad through SageCore to Buenos Aires, I got on a plane, 11 hours, got off the plane. There was some driver, took me to my homestay location. I got there. I spoke really crappy Spanish at the time and was like communicating who I am. And they showed me to my room. I put my bags down, sat down on the bed, and immediately thought, what the hell am I doing here? Like, that was the first thing I had when I finally got off the plane and realized where I was. I was like, what the hell? What did I just get myself into? I'm here for 2 months. Like, this is insane. But then you get over that really quickly and realize, I'm here for 2 months. This is insane in an amazing way. I have such an amazing opportunity to establish myself here and make connections and make friends and make memories. And, you know, my experience was through SageCore, but whether that's post-grad, going abroad for any type of reason, you know, identifying that you're going to feel that way, it's going to be okay. And then once you get past that, there's this whole world of opportunity, and that people are there to help you. People are there to support you. People want you to feel comfortable in their country. They are glad that you're there. They're thrilled and so impressed that you took this risk and took this opportunity to come to Ireland, to come to Argentina, to come to Netherlands, and experience their culture. And they want to share it with you. And so I'll transition to Chris to maybe to dive deeper on that note, and kind of, for him, right, he was in that boat. He came abroad after college and probably was like, what the hell I get myself into? It would have been much safer to take a banking job, but I'm not. I'm here. And so, you know, what did he do to from a post-grad be comfortable as well?
Yeah, I definitely want to second what Jake said. I do agree with all that. I'll try and add to that. The first thing I would like to kind of make a point about is the risk. You know, when I did it, and even now, you know, people commend me like, wow, that was so brave of you to take that risk. And, you know, I mean, I guess it is fair to an extent. But I never saw it as a huge risk. Aside from the, you know, there is certainly a financial risk, and I won't diminish that at all. And if you can afford it, that's one thing. And if you can't, that's another thing. But if you can afford it, and you're willing to take that financial risk, and again, it's kind of a bet on yourself, an investment in yourself, the risk is not so substantial. You've just graduated college. You're kind of getting your feet under you. Let's say you hate it. Like, you just have a horrible experience. The job is not right even. You will learn a lot about yourself and what you don't like and how you deal with adversity. Whereas you wouldn't have ever learned that if you just were immediately dropped into the ideal situation. So I think that there's certainly a lot of value in just putting yourself out there, even if you don't think it's going to be a great situation. Particularly living abroad, living on your own at that age, still trying to, most of you, I imagine, and I am too, is kind of still trying to figure out what you want in your career. Pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is probably the best thing you could do to explore what your passion is, what you care most about, and to kind of create an internal compass for yourself, right? Like Jake said, it's hard to kind of plot out your career in a very linear path. But for me, it's about kind of solidifying your internal compass, that you know how to evaluate these life decisions, these career opportunities, which opportunities are right for you. If you kind of equip yourself with those tools to understand yourself, understand what you want and what you value the most, you'll be able to make these tougher decisions throughout your career. So again, it's really just about kind of understanding yourself in a different way, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And again, it's not a huge risk aside from the financial factor. And if you can afford it, it's career-wise, it's not a huge risk. And then the other thing I want to say is 2 or 3 months may sound like a lot, but it is absolutely nothing. Every cohort that I've, and including myself, my own experience, every cohort that I've managed, all 3 of them, almost every one of them was like, that was incredibly fast. I just got my feet under me. Like, I want to stay for longer, or I wish it was longer, or I didn't realize how quickly it would go. You know, the first couple of weeks might be difficult, but honestly, after like 3 or 4 weeks, you'll start getting your feet under you, and you'll start to really start enjoying it towards the end of that. So, you know, 2 to 3 months, you may hate it. That's fine. You have a great experience in your belt. You may realize at the end of those 2 to 3 months, this is something I want to pursue. And the advantage of doing it after graduating, and again, some of you may be in different places, I did it after graduating, is that you can stay, and you potentially have that opportunity. So that's kind of my insight there from my experience.
It's perfect. We didn't leave you with a lot of meat left on the bone, so I think you made do very well with what was already said prior to that. I think the risk level is really, and Jake, that's a great share in the chat that everyone should check out. It's a TED Talk if you haven't heard it already, by Simon Sinek. But I think, like you said, that risk that we potentially hold ourselves back on because we think it's too big of a risk. At the end of the day, you take that risk, you know, you look at it as a worst case, you spend a year abroad or a few months abroad. It's not like home is going anywhere, right? You can come back, but the more ingrained you get in home, the much more difficult it does become to go abroad. And so keep that in consideration if this is something that interests you, if you need to itch that scratch. Just great advice from both Jake and Chris in that regard.
Yeah, and one other thing on that is that it is the easiest time to move abroad right after you graduate. I have so many friends now that we're all like 3 to 4 years into our career that are like, I am angling at my company to move abroad. There might be an opportunity that opens up in London. I'm trying to angle for it. Maybe it happens in 2 years, or I don't want to leave my job now, but I want to move abroad. It's too late in my career. Like, it is the easiest time to do it right after you graduate. And I couldn't stress that more. You guys might not realize it, but it's the easiest time to do it.
It's beyond true. Once you get started down a path, it becomes much more difficult to jump to the other path and do something like this that has that inherent risk that isn't so large. We're going to jump into breakout rooms in 5 minutes. Before we go in there, and I split you guys all up into either room with Jake and Chris. Both have amazing insights and can speak to Dogpatch similarly But if you have a specific question for one of them and you're in the opposite room, just chat me on here, and I can move you over. So I want to make that known. But they both should be able to address any question. But before we jump into that room to address the group, Jake and Chris, a lot of things have been said. I've told the group that, done is better than perfect. I've told them about connecting the dots, but what would be if you have one, kind of a startup cliche or startup advice that you would give to the students as they navigate their internships at startups this summer? It can be a gimmick, it can be a real thing. I know you've already said reaching out, so I may be reaching for something deeper in your lingo and in your experiences, but we'll do that and then we'll jump into the breakout rooms. So I'll keep filibustering for a second, and then if one of you have one, you can jump in.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if it's a really cliche, and I've also mentioned this, but I think the biggest thing for working at a startup versus working at a larger company, when you're kind of starting out in an entry level position in a larger company, they will have had so many people that have filled your role before. There will be a playbook for your position. Again, this isn't painting with broad strokes here, but oftentimes, and I've learned this from my friends as well, is that you'll have a pretty cut and dry job spec. This is what you should be doing. This is how you will get a raise. This is how you'll get a promotion in 1 year. If you do all these things, you do this. It's not like that in the startup world. You can create your own path. And I think the key thing here is to not wait for someone else to create that for you, because they won't. Like, your boss may be the founder of the company, and giving you work to do for the next 2-3 days is like so far down on his priority list. You need to do the work of managing yourself for him. Jake will know this phrase that our manager, our founder, always says is manage up, which means manage yourself in his position for him so he can do less work. Say, what if I were him and I were managing me? What would I have Chris do in order to create more value for this company? And just think about it that way, and don't wait, and don't just do what you're told to do. Do more than that. Do what you're told to do, but just exceed it and try and think about how you can take it to the next level.
That's great. Jake, yours?
Dang, that's really hard to follow up. Yeah, I think there's so many ways for you to do that in the startup world, like creating value, putting yourself out there. Like, I guess my favorite thing that I always tell founders is go and break things. Just go, obviously, with you guys being new in a role, you want to feel it out and see what's going on, but go and try something new, do something radically different. Like Chris said, the opportunity you have in a startup is not only to take on roles and do new projects that you wouldn't normally have had an opportunity to do it. You get quite siloed in some of these larger organizations. I think I always tell people break things, move fast and break things. I know that's kind of a startup phrase as well, but go out there and I've to the detriment of sometimes I've just look, I'm just going to go do it. You're not going to have a meeting and let's get everyone involved, the stakeholders around the table, and let's talk about what the best way to go about this is. And here's your delegated responsibilities. And if you're on a startup that's growing like a rocket ship, doubling in growth every year, there's just, one, isn't going to be the time. Two, there's not going to be people who are going to slow down and be aligned with your priorities until you have a much larger kind of middle management layer that's going to start reprioritizing and doing people ops. So for me, it was always I think that's really cool. I've done my day, what's required of me in this box. Now I'm going to use this extra time to go and try this really out there, funky thing. The first project I took on when I moved here was getting rid of the coffee machines that we had. And there was in no way part of my job spec or what they wanted me to be doing. But I was this is abhorrent that you guys are serving this toxic sludge to all these people. I'm going to go spend my free time. I built a deck. Chris helped me with that a little bit. And pitched why we should go spend $12,000 on new coffee machines, new coffee beans. And it was this weird, well, you're supposed to be selling memberships. I'm yeah, this is going to help keep people in the community, retention and customer satisfaction, all these things. So that's just one example. The retail store that Chris was doing right now, that was never part of our company strategy. And we're going to build this innovation thing, and we're going to build these accelerators, and then that's going to lead to this. And it's no, Chris was well, we have Unilever as a partner. We're doing the smart cities thing. Chris is really interested in I assume Chris beforehand was retail technology, all these things. He went and found those guys, talked about how this would be good, went to Amazon Go stores in New York, brought all this research back, it did it on his own. Like, that was never part of it. It's like, you're going to go and have these things in front of you that you're going to have to just go and do. Like, some of them are going to suck. Some of them are going to be really exciting, but it's the in between of like, if you don't know what to do, like, or there's not something that's been clearly spelled out, or you find yourself with free time, or you're like really overly passionate about something that no one else really cares about, like, just go and do it. Bring visual presentations help a lot. So like getting your manager or your boss, especially if funding is involved, like on board, like use something that's visual. We always build decks for everything we're doing here, and like bring a visual aid, like help them picture it and see it. Like, don't just put it like a 1-page thing, like really go for it. And so I know the stream of conscious thoughts there, guys.
No, it
Yeah.
totally helps. It totally helps. Chris, go ahead.
One other thing to add to that Jake, actually, you kind of just reminded me of. There are, let's be clear, there are advantages and there are definitely disadvantages to working at a startup. And you need to understand, like, what are those advantages, what are those disadvantages, and where do I fit into that? And the key thing is, like, understand the advantages and take advantage of those advantages. Like, if you're working for a startup and you're not taking advantage of the advantages, why are you doing it? And the key advantage here is you can take ownership of your role. And like Jake was saying, like, you can like create a pitch deck for new coffee machines. Whereas if you're working in a large company, they might get angry at you for wasting company time. So take advantage of that opportunity that you would have in working for a startup.
Totally. And I do want to jump off that really quickly to address something else that in the room. If this lifestyle and this work style is not for you, that is totally okay as well. You know, this is a startup program. You're working for startups, but as Chris mentioned, you know, at the top, you may be learning that this does not align with your career goals. This is not how you like to operate, and that is totally okay. You don't have to be sitting here saying, "Oh, yeah, I need to figure out how I can do better in this situation or how this works for me more." You might be learning that this situation actually doesn't work for you, and you're going to do a great job this summer, and next year you're going to learn to recruit for a bigger company because you know you feel more comfortable there. And I just want to make that known to the group, that obviously, while SageCore works with startups and we believe in the startup experience, that you're totally okay if you're having some of those thoughts, but keep in mind that you are still interning at a startup this summer and need to deliver value, but it doesn't mean you're locked into this world moving forward. So I do want to note on that, because obviously we have some startup evangelists in this chat and we're all supportive of the industry and love the uncertainty that it brings, and don't want you to feel like you're stuck in a void where you just have to listen to us harp on how great it is. So we're going to jump into the breakout rooms. I've got you split up. Like I said, if any of you want to be in a different room, have a specific question for Jake or Chris, and you're in the opposite room, just ping me and I'll move you over. We'll spend 20 to 30 minutes in here, so please bring questions. If you are going to ask questions, please turn your camera on. A bunch of you still have your cameras off, but please turn it on. Jake and Chris want to see your faces. They want to know who they might be helping in the future. So those of you who have it on already, appreciate it. And two, do bring questions. There's been a lot of content discussed, both from living abroad, working abroad, startups, Dogpatch. You've got a lot to chew off of that you have questions for, and they're happy to answer them. So I'm going to send us in there now, and we'll spend some time in there, and we will rejoin the group in about 20 or 30 minutes and say bye and carry on with the rest of our days. So I opened up the rooms now, and jump on into the specific rooms. Hey guys, those of you that are still here, we jumped into breakout rooms. So you should have something pop up that has you assigned to a specific room. Hey, Wendon, Krish, Mai, and Andrew. You guys might be away from your computer or otherwise, but if you want to join the respective breakout rooms, go for it. If you want to exit the group in general, you can do that as well. I'm gonna hop over to some of the breakout rooms to see how they're going, but you guys are more than welcome to join or take off.
When I can kind of see the fruits of my labor, and I can actually feel like I'm making a tangible impact. I find, like, for example, when I was working for the Wizards, was my first internship, I was doing ticket sale and data analytics for ticket sales, and it sounds kind of cool, like for a basketball team. Yeah, it was so mundane. It was just data entry, and then it was inventory management. So mundane, and I was like falling asleep at my desk. I honestly fell asleep at my desk once. My manager had to wake me up. I was like, I just can't. I'm not effective doing this. I can't get myself out of bed to do this. So it's like, if for me to be even valuable for a company, I need to do something that genuinely excites me, because, and when I do find something that excites me or take ownership, I go 110%. So that's me. And it's kind of understanding yourself, and again, finding these different job opportunities. And I encourage you guys to do many different types of things that you might not even think you'd like, just so you can understand yourself. Like, for me, doing something I didn't like was super important to finding what I did like. And then the consulting firm, it was a kind of more of a boutique consulting firm. So it wasn't a large company, called DoSomething.org, to kind of help large corporates access young people and kind of get the message across to young people. And for that was more interesting because I was, my manager was doing some really interesting stuff, and just shadowing her was super exciting for me. The work I did wasn't particularly exciting, but kind of the environment there, was super exciting, and it's something that I was like, yeah, this could really motivate me. So I knew I wanted, that's the kind of size I wanted, like under 50 people. You get to know people really well, you work well with them, and you kind of work towards a broader goal, rather than if you're at a large company, like your broader goals might be like meeting a sales target or closing a client. Whereas a broader goal that I'm really interested in is, like, for example, this retail store was like opening a retail store that we've never done before. Like that's the type of stuff that gets me out of bed. So you got to understand, like, this is going to be something, your job is going to be something you're going to do most of your waking life. So do something that you like actually doesn't feel like a job. I know that's also a very cliche thing, but like, it's been super important for me. And our company culture at Dogpatch Labs is very much like, it's not a 9-to-6 job. It's get it done, make an impact by any cost. Like, take your time off when you need it, but when you're there, you grind, and we'd work many late nights just by our own volition. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anyone else? Are you guys mostly recent graduates, or junior year maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm calling from Lebanon, by the way. So it's 8 p.m.
Awesome.
here now. Yeah, so I'm gonna be graduating in December, and my question to you is on the advice you gave us on traveling right after graduation. So my question for you is, for someone who's freshly graduated, how did you manage to find the capital to go on that adventure and then, get settled until you found your ideal job?
Yeah. First thing I'll say is I'm also part Lebanese. My grandfather grew up in Beirut, Lebanon, so it's great to hear a Lebanese voice. To answer your question, I had worked a student job.
Who's next? Who else?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was like a line or something. Well, I'm from Monterrey, Mexico, which is like a city that is like very industrial in terms of that it like is focused on oil, cement, and like steel. And I think we're lacking like that, I don't know, like empowerment to like the tech hubs and all that. So like what advice can you give like culturally, or like what changes did you see in your city that transform it to like a tech hub, like to a more, I don't know, like yeah, tech oriented or something?
Absolutely. Look, and in different cities are at different stages of ecosystem development. And so that's exciting. For me personally, really passionate about that. So you mentioned a lot of those like industrial industries. I know Monterrey does a lot of export as well. So like there would be a lot of innovation enterprises associated with that. So like construction tech is going to be massive in the next like 5 to 10 years. So when you look at like industries that are the least digitized of any, construction and agriculture are at the very bottom. Like there's so little technology relative to places like advertising or, you know, somewhere else, you know, financial tech. Like construction tech is very new. So I think there's opportunities for things like that. Just when you look at what is your city strong at, like what is your city's strengths, and then how is there a technology enabled component that aligns with that. So at first I would be looking at those kind of clusters and seeing if there's any activity there. Secondarily, if you're looking to kind of take a lead step in that, we've actually directly mapped the correlation between the number of meetups in an ecosystem and the ecosystem's maturity. So, I mean, meetup.com is kind of the kind of one true source that most people go to. I mean, obviously you can host them on Eventbrite and Facebook events and wherever else. But I think starting to host, if you are willing to take that kind of this leadership role, if they don't already exist, if there are meetups and these kind of really focused communities that exist, I would say try to attend those and get in with people that are probably having similar ideas as you and see how you can have a multiplying effect of like, oh, the 4 of us are going to work on this thing. If there's not a whole lot of that going on or nothing aligned with what you're interested in, like start it yourself. I mean, again, especially now that we're like, you can host these digitally. You don't need to have an event space now. You host an event, put yourself out there and say, I want to look at how we can like move this ecosystem forward. The government's probably working on this as well. So I don't know if there's a city council, what are they called? Chamber of Commerce, like any of these kind of professional organizations, I would say to reach out to. I did a lot of work with the Chamber of Commerce. They're all now looking at emerging business is kind of what these kind of bigger business groups are calling startups. So like talk to them, ask them what they're doing. How are you supporting startups? How are you helping develop the ecosystem? Like put a list of questions together and really put their feet to the fire. And if they're doing something great, see if you can get involved. If not, start something yourself. I think you'd be surprised at how many people will actually say, I've been waiting for something like this and I just never took the initiative myself. And again, happy to help if there's anything I can do to plug you in with people that have done that. Happy to do so. But does that answer your question? I mean,
yeah,
there's not really one true starting place. I think a lot of times what you see is governments will heavily subsidize and help lift these programs from an early stage. And then you finally kind of see a transition after 5-6 years into privately led ecosystems where you have, you know, startups that are funding themselves that are then funding ecosystem development activities. So I think ask these organizations, ask your government or your local kind of, you know, city council or whoever's there, if they are engaging with early stage businesses or, you know, entrepreneurs or what are they doing? Look at Meetup, look at Facebook. And if there's nothing there that's really aligned with you, I'd say try to just get something started. And at least then you're building a network of people that are, you know, interested in similar things. And that could lead to opportunities down the road and from there. But Startup Genome is a really good resource. If you look up Startup Genome, they'd have some stuff around ecosystem development, data, reports. What have other ecosystems in Colombia, in Wisconsin, and like where are these other emerging marketplaces and what have they done? Like again, all these ecosystem activities have happened before. Like it's not like you're doing something for the first time. It's been done. There's tried and true practices. Collect the data, talk to people, iterate. Like, so just look out there. And again, I'm happy to share any or all those resources that I know, but I think that's a good place at least to start.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah, how's it going? Go for it.
I know you said you kind of serendipitously found your way to your current position, but now that you're here, do you have a 5-year or a 10-year plan? And how does working at your current position kind of align with that? And I know you're only a few years older than us, but are you thinking at this stage about exit opportunities and, you know, what might come in the long-term future?
Absolutely. Look, and this is, I think everyone should have a long-term goal. Like I said earlier, it's like, I want to get into politics, like a life aspiration for me. So like, but I don't have this is the steps. I don't overprescribe how I'm going to get there. You have to have a target at the end. Otherwise you're just spinning your wheels. So it's like, have something at the end. So for me, it's like, I want to get into more of a policy, like influence part of my role. So I'm leaning heavily into these regional programs that we're running. How are we helping, to your question, Paula, like how are we helping these nascent ecosystems develop? Because then I can translate that skill back in the US in these new developing economies, and how are we helping stimulate them? So I think I need these skills to get to there. And so how do I reverse engineer that in my current role and tell my manager, hey, I want to get into more of these type of projects. Hey, I want to work on this. Actually, I've already done a bit of a proposal here on what I want to do. So again, startups give you that leeway to kind of have that flexibility and find your opportunity. I think what I did previously was like, I was like in a very much a sales role. I hate being on a phone and making like 100 dials a day and trying to, how do I get into more of an operation and people facing role? Okay. And then you kind of take a little bit of a horizontal move into this role, doing product management. Okay. How do I take another little step and build my expertise out? So again, I don't have a specific 5-year plan. I do think about, do I want to return to the States? I do think you should be thinking, what is my next move? I've only ever looked at one move ahead. Is this opportunity going to be taking me to that next stage? Is this going to stay at this company? I think having an aspiration, like a lofty goal, like when you're making a goal, it should be like, I might never even achieve that, but I'm going to shoot for that. And here's what I think: skill sets. Like you should be building skill sets rather than resumes. Like you shouldn't like, oh, I'm going to work for this company because it's going to look really good on my resume. Like that might be, but how are you building the skill sets that are going to go, oh, I'm going to get that job because I did project management for this many projects. I'm going to get that because I had financial experience running our inbound sales pipeline or inventory management. I did facilities contingency planning for COVID-19. What happens if there's a case? That's now something I can apply in a general manager type of role. Like I have these committees and like action plan responses. And so I think you should be collecting skills rather than kind of like notches on the belt. It's like, I've done this project, document it as well. Like everything you're doing, you should be taking a note, updating your resume or your LinkedIn regularly. Yeah, so have an aspiration. I want to go after this, and then reverse engineer. Well, what are the skill sets? If you know someone that's in the role that you want, same as what I said earlier, email them. Hey, how did you get to that role? How did you get to head of innovation for this big bank? Or how did you get to working for the city of San Paulo doing this job? Well, I did this and I learned that and I did a night class that was here. Like they'll kind of give you the roadmap, and then you can just augment that based on what your personal interests are. I wanted to work abroad. Great. I'm getting this international experience that I can bring back to the States, or go work for the European Parliament or the EU, or like it just opens up more doors when you can have this. Does that answer kind of what you're looking for there, Sebastian? Like, I think everyone should have a target. Like everyone should have that thing that they want. It's like their dream job or their dream opportunity, or just generally like, what are you passionate about? I posted that book, Start With Why. I think when you know what motivates you, I'm not motivated by money. So I'm never going to go like, oh, I'm going to go work this 250K sales job and work all these hours because money is what makes me motivated. Some people are, and that's fine. Like I'm motivated by people, and how do I help people get to that next thing? So I want to be front facing. I want to be in front of customers. I want to be like actively working and helping them solve problems. And so I've been able to kind of find a path that allows me to do that. So
Hey, all. Awesome. I was in both rooms. There's definitely some good discussion going on. We did get the feedback from our last event that we want more time. So, tech issues, obviously, I did not set the timer properly. That's on me. But I think it may be, we can open questions up to the wider group, and Jake and Chris can address everyone. So want to give 10 minutes for that. If there are still any remaining questions, if you didn't have the opportunity to ask a question that you wanted to ask to the other person, now would be the time. Thank you all for the questions so far. So if anyone has any more questions, now is the time to speak up. And don't be too intimidated.
I can, Jacob, I can share a question that was asked in my breakout group, and I also can flip it over to Jake and see if he has any response to
Sure.
it as well,
Totally.
which I thought was a good
Great.
question. Was what are the disadvantages of working for a startup? And to just give a quick synopsis of my answer, and Jake, it'd be good to hear yours as well, is that the first thing was there's oftentimes not an HR department, or if there is, it's a shared service, especially when your team is 15 people or so. You might not have a dedicated HR person. And that disadvantage manifests in different ways. For example, for me, my visa renewal application I had to do myself. There was a mistake in it. It took 2 plus months to renew it. I had to fly home because my previous visa had expired. It was just a whole mess. Whereas if there was an dedicated HR department that just is used to doing this, it would have been easy, done. I would have stayed there. I would have had to come home for the 2 months. That's a risk. And again, that manifests in different ways. And then the other thing would be oftentimes your salary will be lower than it will be at a larger company doing the same role. And the flip side of that is that you have potentially more opportunity to increase your salary if your company, increases fast. So less stability, more opportunity for upward growth, but also the flip side of that is your startup could go belly up and you're out of a job. So it's something that you need to consider. Like if stability is something that's important for you, don't work for a startup.
All right.
I have a, oh.
Go for it.
Oh yeah, I have a quick question. So I plan on working as a software developer wherever I'll end up working at. But one worry I have about working at a startup is that there won't be as much guidance early in your career when you're at a startup as compared to like a larger company. Do you think that's the case, or is it the other way around where because startups are so active, you actually get better guidance?
Yeah, Jake, you want to go ahead?
I'm happy to jump in. Yeah, look, it depends on the skills. Like, so when we say startups, like, there's definitely a huge spectrum that you can like operate in. So, like, if you're at a seed-funded company with like 5 or 6 people, that's probably the case. The fact of the matter is that you're being brought on. If you're at that within the first 10 to 20 hires, you're being brought on to fill a certain need that company has, or a skill set that the existing team does not have. And so a lot of times, if you're in a company that's 20 people or smaller, you might not have a direct manager who's doing the role that you're doing. You're doing what they can't do. So you might not have someone who's like, oh, I'm like the technical problem and I'm stuck and like, I want guidance or mentorship on how to like grow and become stronger. Like they might not just have the time. They might not have their own skill set in order to support you in that way. And so, yeah, a lot of what you're going to have to do if you're in at that stage, a lot of reading, a lot of outreach to people. And I said this earlier, was like, find a mentor, find someone who's in the role that you want to have or has that same role at a different company and ask them, hey, I'm new at this company, I want to learn. I'm telling you, you'll get the good responses. I think the other side of that is if you're at a scale up, like if you're at a 100+ person startup, which is still a startup, you might have that opportunity. So there are the big differences of like, you can still work for a startup that's a bit more established, that might have 2 or 3 office locations, in which case you might have kind of a middle management layer and a kind of more clear upward trajectory of support. But that definitely is a trade-off. And so, yeah, I mean, the brute honest is, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, Peter. And actually, it's another disadvantage to a startup, I would say. And it's something, I did mention. But, Jake and I have a good friend, Micah, who's starting at he's doing a software engineer job at a larger consulting firm. And his first 2 months of employment are going to be just training, like just only training. So you're definitely not going to get like a 2-month only training, like start to a startup. You're just not going to get that. And that's something that could be really important for you. And it's something that you should strongly consider. If you're the type of person that learns by doing, then startup could be a good fit. If you're the type of person that wants to be kind of explained how it's done so that you can then do it yourself, which there's no shame in that at all, then maybe you might want to consider something else. And I'm not technical at all in terms of like software development. So that's something that you need to consider on your own. I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions with the group? Otherwise, we can wrap up 5 minutes early and say our thanks, but I want to give the floor if there's any other lingering questions that you all want answered. So
I have a question. Well, another one. For example, like in your case, did you have like a setback or like kind of a failure that almost like stopped you from making what is today like a company?
Jake.
Yeah,
Give
I mean,
mine.
yeah, for me, like I've definitely I've royally screwed things up, and I think there's something about being in a startup. You need to have comfortable being in that place of potentially like absolutely blowing a deal or blowing something up. Like it's nerve wracking because it could just be you. I guess for me, like something that I've like definitely like just like I said totally miffed was like there's going to be a new teammates. So I guess this is a good one. It's like new teammates that are joining, and like you're hopefully going to give them a good experience and onboarding, and you have these like decks and packs and things you've done. Like totally like forgotten that I had someone starting. Like I've just like it's just a terrible first day. Like didn't have anything prepared, didn't really have anything ready. Like they didn't really know what to expect, and so they kind of came in rough and ready. But like I guess that's something that I feel really just like personally negative about is that like I gave another person like a really terrible onboarding experience because they just like they didn't have like this is what to expect, and like they just come in like I'm new, you're supposed to tell me. And so I mean again I'll put the hand up and say that was just because I was running 1,000,000 miles an hour and just forgot, oh yeah, we hired this person, I need to like plan for that. So that's my like war story. But I think the important thing in any case, if you do make a mistake, is like own it. Like don't ever try to hide from a mistake in the business world, especially in a startup, because you can't hide. Like the buck only goes so far, and you're going to gain a lot more respect even if you totally screwed up, you lost the company money, an idea, whatever, like, but just owning it and then being able to explain why you do it differently the next time, or what the steps were that you did wrong and how you would have corrected them. Like, but just being really self-reflective in that and owning it that like, yeah, I screwed this up, but here's how I'm going to do it better next time, or something like that. So
yeah, that's an important kind of takeaway, Jake. For me, so I'm managing the Unilever partnership. We had a big meeting with our CEO and some of the Unilever partnership team. I was in charge of kind of preparing the logistics of the meeting and just setting up the agenda and all that type of stuff. And I just wasn't well prepared for it, honestly. Just didn't put in the type of like just the attention to detail that was required. But that was like, I don't want to bore you with any of the details. But anyway, after the meeting, it was just like, yeah, I knew I screwed that one up. I just definitely just like screwed it up. And I remember our CEO asked to speak with me afterwards. I was like, I wanted to speak with him. I was like, yep, I know exactly what I did. Before you say anything, let me just speak first. And I was like, I know exactly what I did wrong. Here's everything I did wrong. Like, this is kind of my explanation. I was up till 11 p.m. last night working on all this stuff. I backloaded all my work until last night. Super tired, missed a lot of things. My apologies. I'm going to be much more proactive on this, and that won't ever happen again. He was like, yeah, all right, that's it. See it. Like, you know, that's the key, is like, in startups, failure is going to be very present. It's happens all the time. Like, that's one example of failure. Like, I've failed on many things. We all have. That failure is acceptable, completely acceptable in startups. But being accountable for it, recognizing it, learning from it, bettering yourself from it is required. So yeah.
Yeah, I think those are great points to wrap up on it and say thanks. I think just to summarize that answer, right? Failure is inevitable. It's inevitable in your life regardless. Ownership and accountability is not inevitable, but it is required. Like Chris said, you need to take ownership and accountability for your life and your actions. Ultimately, you know, it falls on your shoulders, the steps you take, the initiative you take, the people you outreach to, your career path. No one else, I don't want to say no one else can influence it, but no one else can necessarily have the direct control over it like you will. My headphones just died, so that was hopefully a smooth transition. So I want to wrap up and just say a really huge thanks to Jake and Chris. There were some awesome nuggets in this, and thank you all for taking an hour and a half out of your work days, Jake and Chris as well, to chat. You know, we'll be setting a feedback form if this was too much time. We wanted to have enough time for you all to ask meaningful questions. So we'll be looking forward to hearing that from you guys. But
But before we go, I want to give you guys a chance to thank Jake and Chris directly and make sure we appreciate the time that they spent providing the insights and hopefully, shaping your careers in one way or another and shaping the steps you take throughout the rest of the program. So thanks again, guys. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll hear from you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
And Jacob, I sent over that deck to you on email. So if you want to share that out with folks, that's totally fine. Contact details, whatever. I'm an open book. So
Totally. Really appreciate it.
As needed.
Great seeing you guys. One thing I have to know before you hop off, your Irish accent on some words has become more pronounced. 100%. Like very identifiable. I was like, oh man, it's happening. I was wondering.
Oh no, it's happening.
Yeah.
I've been getting that. When I come home, I hear that. I'm like, there's no way. It's like, there's no way that's
like
true.
You said that a couple times. And I'm like, and I just listened to a podcast the other day with, I think it was John Collison or Patrick on Invest Like the Best. I was like, oh, he sounds like him. I was like, the Texas all is slowly turning into the Irish lore. It's going to be an amazing fusion when it all comes together.
Jake's got a good fake Irish accent.
Oh, the fake one will come out there when I'm drinking it.
There you go.
I can tell you what. Yeah.
But awesome. Appreciate it. Great to see both of you. And Sam had some internet issues. She wasn't able to make it. I don't know what up, but she said hello to both of you, and hopefully we'll connect again soon. So really, really appreciate it, you guys. Thanks.
All right. See you, man.
Adios.